You can't kill the boogeyman.
Oh, I can't kill the boogeyman.
Oh my god, it's getting worse. Actually, more than once throughout the course of Halloween, he commented on the sex scenes. That was quick. The teenage boys, that's really unfair. Also, they died really quickly. Oh, that was quick.
At least they got the bang one out before they went.
Exactly.
You're listening to CinePunked, interactive discussions for film lovers. This episode, You Can't Kill the Boogeyman. So, you're welcome back. This is, I think, officially our second season, because we took an unexpected break over the summer that sort of dragged on for a few more months than it was meant to. But we're back now, so I should reintroduce ourselves. I am Robert J. Simpson. I'm joined, as ever, by...
I'm Dr. Rachael Kelly.
And I'm plain old Ben Simpson.
Plain old Ben?
Plain old Ben.
Is there another kind of Ben that we can have?
No.
No. Just plain Ben. So, yeah, tonight we are marking a significant anniversary. It is, believe it or not, 40 years since John Carpenter's Halloween came onto the silver screen and changed the face of horror cinema forever, I think. It's not the only thing that's 40 this year, though.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dr. Kelly's not very happy at the moment. This has made her feel very old.
I'm younger than Halloween.
Just.
By a couple of weeks.
Is that kind of weird, going back and watching something like this that actually is as old as you?
Well, do you know what was actually weirder? Was watching it again and realising that makes it 20 years since Halloween H2O came out. That doesn't feel like 20 years ago.
Do you know, I still haven't seen Halloween H2O.
I wouldn't bother if I were you.
I feel like I've sort of missed big chunks of the series over the years, although I have caught up with most of them.
Again, I wouldn't bother.
Well, apparently we now don't have to, because there's a new film coming out.
It retroactively knocks all of the other continuity out the window, which I think is probably a good thing, because I think the purity of that first film, now this is going to sound ridiculous talking about sullying the purity of that film, but there was a kind of a something very sort of unique about it, and very stripped back, very kind of essential, that just worked. And I'm sure that's the secret of its success. And by kind of building onto that with ridiculous angles, it almost kind of takes away from the original, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it probably does. I mean, it was a ridiculously low-budget film that went on to phenomenal box office. It was about $300,000 is what it cost to make, and it made...
70 million worldwide.
Which is phenomenal. I mean, you can see why they kept on going with that series. Although, I suppose the good news is that for the last few years, the series has been in the hand of the Weinsteins, and it's no longer with them. So... Yay.
Yay.
It's a retrospectively weird thing. I'm sure we're going to come back to this theme again. Ben, this was your first time watching it?
It was. I am a Halloween virgin. No longer.
Oh, that's too bad. You're not safe anymore. When the killer comes, you got to be a virgin to survive on Halloween.
Yeah, apparently so.
Look at his wee face. He's just so worried now. It's just like you never know what's going to happen tonight at the end of the podcast recording.
I know what's going to happen. I'm going to sit in front of this computer and twiddle knobs for a bit.
This is, I think, the problem with everyone in Halloween is they spend all their time twiddling knobs, and if they didn't, maybe they would live.
Yes, and isn't that one of the key... Well, it's certainly one of the key criticisms that's been levelled against Halloween, and it's completely founded. I'm going to go right out there and say that. Halloween is a profoundly misogynistic film. Now, I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. I am a gender theorist. I look for this stuff when I watch. I can't not look for this stuff. And it doesn't necessarily spoil my enjoyment. I mean, Halloween is innovative. It's daring. It's bold. It's extremely entertaining. It does hold up in a lot of ways, but it has a woman problem.
Yeah, it does a wee bit. I want to get Ben's thoughts before we get into this too much, because this is your first time watching it. So what were your impressions of the film?
Mediocre.
Mediocre?
At best, yeah.
You had a big grin in your face when you finished watching it there, which we don't often see on you.
Because it was so cheesy.
Okay.
Like, there's, like, that's a good Stilton right there.
I think it probably hasn't. It doesn't compare to modern kind of gory slasher.
That's the thing, though. I don't really enjoy that kind of movie. I don't enjoy like slasher movies or grotesque murder just for the hell of it movies. I don't enjoy watching that kind of thing. So I was going into it going, I'm not going to like this. This is going to suck. I suppose it's not the worst one, but it's definitely no The Room.
I'm glad you said that, because nothing will ever top The Room for sheer cinematic
awfulness.
Something.
Yeah, it's okay. It's an okay movie. Like I can't really relate to see why it did so well, but maybe it's just because I'm not from that time.
Could be. I mean, I guess if what you're used to is sort of something that's a faster pace, that's got more going on, that's got more effects, then maybe something that's really stripped back and is about mood more than anything else might be something. There's a few things going to come back to you specifically about later on, because I hope you do have opinions on some of the stuff.
I did like the starting scene.
The one back in 1963.
Yes.
And I'd forgotten that even existed in the film.
How could you forget that existed?
No idea.
That was actually one of the most... it's one of the key sort of innovations that kind of the movie popularised. Everybody was doing that after that.
What? Early prequel bits, or the first-person perspective?
First-person perspective.
Well, this is one of the things. I had completely forgotten about that whole sequence of the film. I don't know how, I don't know why. It's not like I haven't seen this film dozens of times, but it just completely went from my memory, I think, because I'm so caught up with the stuff that happens in Haddonfield contemporaneously. The sort of prequel stuff is it's just not as... it doesn't resonate or doesn't stick in my head in the same way. Well, let's go back to the misogyny, okay? Because I want to get let's beat this beast out.
Is that the turn of phrase you're really going to use about that?
It's going to get worse from here.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
Let's beat this. So the misogyny, you feel it is deeply problematic with women.
Well, the slasher genre in general is deeply problematic with women. Horror in general is deeply problematic with women, and that's before we even get into issues of women of colour. It has...
Well, there are none in this.
There are none in this, no. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a horror film made in Northern Ireland.
There's not one person of colour.
Not at all.
No, not even walking down the street.
Which you couldn't do now.
Yeah.
I mean...
No, because you'd have to put somebody in there to get killed. Which is kind of still very much the function of the person of colour in the horror film. I mean, anybody that's trying to argue that these are politically correct films is going to have a really hard time doing it. I mean, they exist so that this kind of sadistic gaze can be satisfied, where you can watch somebody be terrified and murdered. There's such a lot of work done on why that's pleasurable, and I mean, I watch these, I enjoy a horror film, and I am watching myself watch it.
Yeah, what I'd like to kind of tease out of you is that what exactly is the issue here with, I mean, how is this being misogynistic towards women specifically? I mean, so just remember, I mean, not all of our audience is well versed in gender theory or kind of a lot of these concepts. So it's like let's bring it back and explain why this is the problem.
Well, oh dear. Okay, I would have to go straight into all of that male gaze and Laura Mulvey and the spectacularization of the female body being brutalized, and it's particularly the female body that's brutalized, and there's been all sorts of studies done of slasher films and the amount of time the camera spends over female deaths and female terror versus the amount of time it spends on male deaths and male terror. Now, yeah, definitely there's a guy gets killed in this. There's
several.
Well, okay, fair enough. Bob gets killed and the guy in the truck gets killed. Who's our other guy that gets killed?
I didn't see the guy in the truck getting killed.
We didn't see the guy in the truck getting killed. It's just passed over.
But you see you see his body.
You see a little bit of his body. There's no spectacularization of that body, whereas the body of Annie is actually laid out ritualistically on the bed. We get to watch her every sort of squirming and groaning as she dies. Likewise with Linda. And we spend most of the final act focusing on Laurie's terrified face as she cries and whimpers. It's spectacularization of female terror and violence against women. And that's kind of at the heart of the slasher film.
I suppose this is partly because, not trying to excuse them, but there is also the reality that these are exploitational films, and so that exploitation cinema has always relished in sort of the exploitation of the female form.
Yes, and I mean, that's again, we're going back to Mulvey here, and we're talking about the male gaze, and the idea that the female form within cinema exists to be looked at, and women watch themselves being looked at, whereas men do the looking. I think we would take more than an hour where we'd go over all of the visual pleasure narrative cinema. Yeah.
Do you follow this, Ben? Because I'm very aware that you're kind of our voice of the audience sometimes.
Do I follow
any of the last 5 minutes?
Any of the last 5 minutes? Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think about sort of the films that you've watched in your entire life, I mean, how often do you see a naked female form, or certainly female breasts on screen?
Not very often.
Not very often?
No.
Wife doesn't let you watch those.
Well, like, unless you're like watching Game of Thrones where there's tits all over the show, and
but this is sort of the point. I mean, like, you'll probably find that most films, even in a mainstream film, there's usually a sex scene somewhere, and the woman is usually undressed, and you do see a pair of breasts at some point, a lot of the time.
Sorry,
I'm guessing that's because they can't go full hardcore porno on your ass.
How often have you seen a full frontal male?
A handful of times.
I mean, when you compare the two, the men just don't show off their naked bodies on screen in the same way at all.
It used to be a truism, I don't know if it's still the case, but the fastest way to get your film either banned or sort of X-rated was to have an erect penis on screen, whereas tits, go for it.
Well, they're just lumps of skin, like, but nipples.
Yeah, but so's a penis.
Free the nipple.
Yeah, but
nobody wants to free the fucking penis, like. Sorry.
Well, that's not necessarily true, but the other side of that is that actually you don't even have to have an erect penis. I mean, you don't see penises on screen. Which is why there's that glorious moment in Life of Brian where Brian opens up the window and he's Graham Chapman's standing there and they're all together, and it's just like, this is a wonderful relief because...
Well, the comedy of that moment is entirely rooted in the fact that you're not expecting to see a penis.
Yeah, I mean, it is part of the problem of exploitation cinema, and this is, it's not even just that this is a slasher film, this is exploitation cinema, really, even if it is, I think, quite well made.
Yeah, and it has its roots in exploitation cinema. I mean, it's is it fair to say that Halloween invented a new genre? Probably not. It's following on from a sort of a long existing tradition of films where women get brutally murdered. It's certainly the next. I mean, it sort of instigates the golden age of the slasher film, but it has its roots very firmly in this long tradition of films where spectacularized violence against women was the main draw and why you went to see it, and it was part of the advertising, and it was part of the appeal.
But the reason why that is that not because back then there was a mentality that women were weak and defenseless?
Actually, kind of almost the opposite has been argued for Halloween, that it's a commentary on sexual promiscuity amongst American youth.
Oh, right, okay.
But yeah, I mean, that is a sort of social kind of... You still have... That still exists, this idea that women are the, in inverted commas, the fairer sex, and therefore, I think part of the problem, part of the reason that these films function the way they do is that you have the women to be in peril, ultimately, so you can have some bloke coming along and save them, and it's
kind of the whole sort of the trope of the final girl is kind of predicated on the fact that, well, yes, she will survive, probably because she hasn't had sex with anybody, but she will survive in as much as the guy rides into the rescue and finally sort of saves the day ultimately. She can rescue herself so far.
Well, the guy at the end there that does the rescuing, you can hardly call him like a knight in shining armour, you know what I mean? Sam
Loomis is played by Donald Pleasance, is quite inept in many ways. I think part of that's probably Pleasance's characterization. He's an odd... He just plays it very strangely and very slightly stilted, and he is slightly powerless. He's a man grappling to try and take control of a situation that's well out of his hands.
He's petrified.
Yeah, because he knows what. I think because he knows what's going to happen.
He knows what your man's capable of. But
the thing is that none of the adults in that film are in any way helpful or useful, or there's a conspicuous absence of adults. This is the complete absence. So where are the parents, apart from Annie's dad, who shows up and does absolutely bugger all to help anybody? Where's the? I mean, at one point, Laurie goes and bangs on the door and screams, "Help! Help! Help!" And they look outside and they go, "Nope!" And they turn the light off, and off she goes to be murdered. The only people coming to help in this are teenagers or children.
Children, yeah. I mean, it gives a lot of power to the little kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Donald Pleasance, Sam Loomis. It's rubbish in this. It's all the adults. They either let guys loose or fail to do anything about it.
Although saying that, the wee kid. Look, the boogeyman, I saw the boogeyman outside, and then he just gets dismissed.
Yeah, I mean, so in many respects, actually, the younger you are, the more you need to be listened to.
Yeah.
Because the little boy, Tommy, knows what's going on right from the start. I mean, he can see what's happening. He can see that this creature is here, that this person is here, that shouldn't be there. And he voices the threat that the boogeyman.
Yeah, but it's only our final girl who's able to kind of contextualise that threat. She's the only person who's able to realise the threat and the form that the threat takes, which is why she gets to survive.
Yeah, although I do feel that she only recognises the threat because she sees all her friends mauled and there's a big knife coming over her.
Well, no, she recognises that something's up. I mean, she sees Michael Myers, she's watching Michael Myers from a distance, and nobody believes her.
Oh, yeah, very early on in the film as well, yeah.
Yeah, she sees him watching her. And everybody just goes, "Oh, Laurie, you're so crazy. You're so sexually repressed that you're seeing things." Wow. Again, the connection between sex and death in this is quite interesting. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole sort of final girl trope, which I find very interesting. It's all part of being the only person who is like one step behind the audience in realising what's going on, contextualising it, and that's what gets them to survive, and their plucky resourcefulness.
I have a... did you ever watch the Candyman?
Yes.
Clive Barker.
Yeah, very kind of similar, almost in a way that your man has supernatural powers and can't die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Candyman is very definitely a supernatural entity.
Yeah.
You know, he has to be summoned.
Yeah, Candyman.
Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't. That freaked me out for ages after I saw that film. I was at a tender age.
Someone's not sleeping tonight.
No, I'm not. Or looking in a mirror ever again.
Quick. Let me use this DVD.
No, it's not
you're
a DVD.
so mean.
It's a game. Do you think that was kind of influenced by Halloween?
I think horror generally, I mean, any horror film that's made in the 1980s really stems from Halloween. It changes a lot of the way that stuff works. Mm-hmm. I mean, well, that said, obviously you've got different kind of types of horror going. I mean, this is the era of the video nasties as well, which are a very different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But they have their foot in the same kind of
ultimately
stream, don't they? I mean, that's they come from a similar kind of.
But they're more extreme.
Oh,
they're literally throwing as much blood and guts and tastelessness on the screen as they possibly can.
Yeah, but bear in mind that not most of the slashers, but certainly that was a key element of a lot of the slashers that. I mean, Halloween is remarkable in its restraint. I mean,
yeah, I thought it was quite tame.
It wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, there's only the occasional splash of artfully painted corn syrup. You really see very little gore, very little violence, and very little blood,
and hardly any penetration.
Yeah,
because while you see the knife being lifted and going,
you see
down,
this jerking off action with the knife,
but you don't actually see the knife going into the flesh.
No,
even whenever Laurie penetrates his neck with the knitting needle, which is a very good little old lady kind of weapon to use. You still don't really. I mean, that's a lot of that shot is in darkness, so it's not glorifying the blood.
No,
and I think it is presented. He's very much presented as a real intimidating threat, and it is this thing about self-defense and trying to defend yourself against a home invader, almost. So horror films in sort of the 80s, yeah, I mean, I think they do kind of draw a line from this, and I think horror still does. Although obviously there's other things that are going on now as well. I don't know if you saw It Follows.
Yes, that
No.
was absolutely terrifying. That still has the capacity to send a cold shiver down my spine when I remember it out of the blue.
So It Follows is another film I'd deeply recommend. It very definitely is hugely inspired by John Carpenter's film, although it flips the whole idea of sex around, because basically the only way to survive.
Yeah, it's just
it's
have
the
a
bone.
shag. Yeah.
What?
You got to pass it on by shagging somebody else. Basically, it's a demon that pursues the last person that. Well, it's passed on like almost like a sexually transmitted disease. So once you have sex with somebody that the demon has followed, it passes that on to you. And if you don't have sex again before the demon catches up with you, then it is going to basically shag you to death.
Cool. Sounds awesome.
It's really not. Some of the most disturbing scenes in that film.
But again, it's very simple. I mean, it's essentially, it's a figure slow. If you never, I mean, the concept of a figure slowly walking towards you, that's the threat. And that
It doesn't run, it just walks. So you can outdrive it, which is convenient.
I mean, it's at a very regulated, very slow pace. And this doesn't sound at all frightening, but actually it is. It's a terrifying film, but it very definitely is inspired by the visuals of Carpenter and the style. I mean, Carpenter's Halloween is very much about open landscapes, about space, about eeriness. He makes suburbia seem really, really creepy.
It's also about sort of teenagers and what constitutes loss of innocence in a teenager, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But anyway, sorry, I'm sidetracking.
One of the things I think we have to talk about is Mike Myers himself and his appearance.
Mike Myers?
Yeah, Mike Myers.
Not Michael Myers.
I know. I know.
Comedian and film actor Mike Myers. Shrek.
One of the things about Michael Myers that we should talk about is Michael Myers' appearance.
Yeah. William Shatner mask.
William Shatner mask.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought Captain Kirk would be so fucking scary?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a Captain Kirk mask sprayed kind of bluish white with the eyes cut out.
Serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a Star Trek fan, I wholeheartedly approve.
It feels like right now we've got one of those little memes. They're like, I just found out Halloween mask was a William Shatner mask. My mind is blown.
Well, it's not blown. No, just like, wow, that doesn't even look
It's another
remotely similar.
It's another. They had no money, so what could they do? So the guy went down to the local costume shop and bought it for like $2. Spray painted it and cut the eyes out. And it's really scary looking, isn't it? I mean, it looks like dead flesh.
Well, whenever the guy gets the mask sort of taken off him there, and he puts it, like he stops what he's doing to put it back on. Well, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, the humanity of the monster beneath, or I mean, that's how I always sort of read it.
Sure, even whenever he was killing his sister at the start, he sees the mask. He puts the mask on.
I think the mask is probably. I think we could read the mask as an allegory. I guess it's sort of us trying to deny ourselves and our responsibility. If you're putting on the mask, you're being somebody else. If you're somebody else, you can do whatever the fuck you want. That's how I take it.
Okay. I to be honest, it sort of seemed like it was almost whether sort of within his head or in reality the source of his kind of immortality. With the mask on, he's the monster, and the monster is unkillable. You take the mask off, there's a human underneath that. There's a human that he's been trying to escape for the past, well, I guess 21 years. I mean, he doesn't kill until he's 6, but that's doesn't come out of nowhere. That's just how I
Is
read
he
it.
immortal? What's his deal?
It's supposed to represent the fact that evil is unkillable.
Right. Okay.
There is something I think particularly creepy about the fact that it is Shatner's face. I mean, this is the face of a hero. This is the face of somebody that is loved by a generation.
And very, very recent at this point as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Star Trek wasn't long off the air.
Probably still on reruns, wouldn't it have been at that
I would
point?
have thought so, yeah. And the motion picture was on its way at that point. Oh gosh, it's really bad that I can't remember exactly when the motion picture came out.
I want to say 79, but I could be
I
wrong.
want to say 79, yeah.
So, I mean, Shatner's face itself is not the face that... It's not the face you would associate with sinisterness. It's that in itself adds an extra level of weirdness. It's sort of, again, I think with that idea of suburbia, the suburbia is very familiar. I mean, even sort of where we're recording tonight, you walk around the streets around here, it's not a million miles removed from Haddonfield in terms of appearance. I mean, this is a sort of our local version of it. So that's familiar. So there's always something quite sinister about things happening in a place that you know and you recognise and deem as safe. And Shatner's face is a safe, familiar face. So when you see that coming towards you, it's not immediately what you're going to think of as, you're going to kill me. I'm assuming that was deliberate, or if it wasn't, it's a wonderful serendipity.
What, the fact that it was...
Just that safeness about,
I'm not actually sure, from what I know about the film, I'm not sure that was a consideration. It was never specified in the script. I mean, there was a discussion of what the mask should look like in the script, but as far as I know, it was just literally that was what was available in the shop when he went in with $5 of his costume budget.
Why did they have so little budget?
At this point, Carpenter's only really made a couple of films, and they weren't that expensive. I think Assault on Precinct 13 was the one he made before this, and it was only $100,000 budget. So he'd had 3 times the budget of that to make this one, which for a director is, a significant increase in terms of what money you got to play with. But I think, so he hadn't proved that, he could spend a lot of money and get a big return on it. I don't think anybody ever expected this to get the return that it did. And that's adequate for making a film that's sort of, there's a practicality, but you make a film for a low budget, you've got a better chance of making some money back on it. Mm-hmm. And unless you're doing a tax dodge, you kind of want to make a bit of profit.
Yeah.
Because that's how you make more films. I mean, it was quite canny. It just so happens that they hit on a phenomenon with this. And once they'd made one, they wanted to make more because you repeat a formula that works.
Yeah.
Hollywood has never really learned about this.
So, I mean, you do one of two things. You have a sequel or you do a remake. Or if you're Sam Raimi and you're making Evil Dead, you do both at the same time.
If you're Halloween, you do both.
So I don't know, how familiar are you with the rest of the series?
That was the first and only one I've ever seen.
That's your properly popped cherry tonight?
Yes,
yeah.
properly.
You can pretty much avoid the rest of them, to be honest.
Halloween 3 is good. Halloween 3 is very different. Season of the Witch.
Don't know if I've seen that one.
That's the one with all the it's a really catchy, irritating tune, which
nothing like the original then?
No, it's actually nothing like the original. It was Nigel Neal was responsible for it, who was perhaps better known for writing Quatermass. John Carpenter was a huge fan of Nigel Neal and got him to do this one. But they basically it's a completely different lineage, it's a different chronology, it's a different setup entirely. He had this notion that what they would do was have films set at Halloween in different kind of almost like an anthology, I guess, rather than having this one set of characters that you went to over and over again. But it is so different, it is well worth having a view if you've never seen it before. And it's all about this factory that's producing these Halloween masks that seem to have an eerie quality to them. There's a really catchy tune, which, providing I've got any sense, I'm now going to stick into the podcast right here.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
You guys aren't going to get it. You're going to go, what the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck?
What the fuck? But I'll do it for the listeners. Got to do something for the listeners. Fuck knows they put up with us. You didn't catch the remake?
The Rob Zombie remake?
Yeah, the
I
Rob
did not.
Zombie 2007
I very
remake.
much did not do that, no.
I watched it this week for the first time. I'm not a huge fan of Rob Zombie, but it does have Malcolm McDowell. And I like Malcolm McDowell a lot. Yeah, the remake, the Zombie remake, basically takes the essential story, but it gives a lot of reason to why Michael Myers is the way that Michael Myers is.
Exactly. I knew that about the story, and I don't need that.
No.
He's much more scary when we have no idea. And Donald Pleasance talking about this black-eyed evil is really chilling. I don't need to. It's like when Charlie and the Chocolate Factory gave us reasons why Johnny Depp, Willy Wonka wanted to run a chocolate factory. I don't care. I don't need to know.
It's because Christopher Lee said you shouldn't eat sweeties.
Exactly.
Because it'll rot your teeth.
That's it.
It removes. It's this sort of idea of you need to know this stuff about your character when you're writing the character, but your audience doesn't need to know it. Don't put it there. It's not strengthening the character, it's weakening the character.
Which is probably the problem with the franchise as a whole, is that they've given us so much exposition over the years, and you can see now why in this upcoming film, or probably out now as listeners are listening to this, why in this new film they have just ignored all that character development over the last 40 years, because it's made the whole story far more convoluted. It's limited them, because the problem with continuity is you have to keep on paying credence to the continuity. You get caught up in it.
So is this new one going to be a complete reimagining?
No, apparently. It is literally set 40 years in the future, and it's back with Laurie and Michael Myers.
Does it ignore H2O?
Apparently it ignores everything after the first Halloween movie.
Good, because I did not like what they did with her in H2O.
I really need to watch H2O so we can have
really
a conversation about this.
You really don't. Honestly, you don't. I mean, it's a Scream cash-in, basically.
Ah, well, now you've mentioned Scream.
No, I've mentioned Scream, yes.
You've seen Scream? No.
Yes.
Ah, you've seen Scream.
I have.
You didn't like Scream? You did like Scream?
I don't like those kind of movies.
Now, hopefully, you may, if you catch Scream again, you may realise that a lot of what Wes Craven's doing is parodying and paying homage. He's more paying homage. It's
paying homage, yeah, definitely.
So he runs in that movie. The killer.
In Scream?
Yes.
Yes. I think he does.
No, he does. He chases after people.
Yeah, but
to stab them. It's
a slightly different kind of setup, but what he's doing is he's playing with some of the tropes that are established by Halloween, and it's, those films that took...
I think that's what I sort of mean when I talk about Halloween has in some ways aged very well, in some ways it really hasn't, because anybody watching Halloween today has probably seen Scream, and once you've seen Scream, you cannot watch Laurie do everything wrong without going, "Don't run up the fucking stairs!" Because Scream kind of so neatly dissects and deconstructs and pulls that all apart and says these are the rules, and you go, yes, of course these are the rules. We've all seen horror films, so watching Halloween post Scream is a different experience.
Yeah.
You see, I was lucky. I saw it as a kid, so
yeah, so did I. Yeah.
It was
well, like whenever when Laurie locks herself in the flipping closet, I'm like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah.
You went over to the window. He didn't even go near the window. He just went straight for the cupboard.
Well, I mean, she sends the kids into the bathroom with a glass door, which, having seen this guy, kind of doing the things that he's done, clearly is not going to be any kind of obstacle to him.
No.
But I think that is, again, I guess that's her innocence. Is it her youth? It's just that or is it just actual fear? Is whenever you're so concerned that you actually can't think straight, and you'll do the first thing you can do, which is just barricade ourselves up against a wall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly relevant. I mean, it doesn't make for good drama when people react the way human beings would probably react. I mean, just, because you might sort of jump around and go, oh my god, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? There's a mad murderer here. What am I going to do? I don't need to see 15 minutes of somebody doing that while trying to lock every window of the house and repeatedly phone the police and hold their mobile phone aloft looking for signal, which is what we would probably do. At least I hope I would. I consistently score really poorly in Would You Survive a Zombie Apocalypse tests. So there's an excellent chance that I'm probably, one of the first to go should anything like Scream or Halloween ever happen. It's just these days seeing her be that helpless is just a bit annoying for a modern audience, because we are conditioned to know the rules for how you survive these things.
Yeah, I guess I sort of don't agree a bit, because whilst she does sort of flounder and seem a little bit useless, she does gradually start taking control bit by bit, and she fights back.
She does fight back, of course, yeah.
That's that fight or flight. You know.
Well, I mean, the first thing she does, she actually protects the kids. She gets the kids out of the house and down the street to somewhere else. I mean, she doesn't do what I think a lot of people would do, which is stay with the kids. She trusts the kids to actually take care of themselves, to get somewhere safe. She realizes that they're not really probably the target of the threat.
Now we're getting all into this sort of sacrificial mother trope as well, which is, again, I would argue the reason she gets to survive, because she is performing appropriate femininity by the hegemonic standards of the time. I'm sorry, I've made everybody hate me who heard that, but I stand by it.
Could you say it again for our people who are not academics?
Okay, so what she's doing is behaving in line with how women are supposed to behave at that time, and I would argue not a lot has changed that much since then. So it's expected of women to be maternal and nurturing and to put the children ahead of themselves, and Laurie is the only woman in that that film that actually demonstrates any kind of maternal concern. Where are the mothers? Where are the adult figures? And the other two, well, you know, Annie can't be bothered with Lindsay at all. Annie finds Lindsay an irritation. She's getting in the way of having sex. Linda isn't even affiliated with children in the slightest. So that is part of the female problem in Halloween, is the fact that one has to behave appropriately as a woman in order to be allowed to survive.
Or she's being paid to be the babysitter and look after the kids.
And she's doing her job.
Yeah,
and she's doing her job.
She's probably getting $150 an hour, you know.
I don't know. I reckon she's getting money off her friend too, because she's taking the two kids on board and she's agreed to do that so they can.
I don't think Annie was planning to pay her for that.
I don't know.
Well, maybe her payment was, here, I set you up with this boy.
Well, that's right. She did say that she's going to have to speak to the boy to kind of undo that whole thing.
Yeah.
Even though Laurie really likes him and he is established as liking Laurie, I didn't really understand why we have to be that virginal, Laurie.
They're teenagers. I mean, your head is, certainly as a teenager, for me, my head was all over the place. I had no idea.
Yeah, but if my friend went to the boy that I liked and found out that he liked me too, I'd have been all over that shit.
I still can't manage this. I'm in my mid-30s now.
Stop showing off just because you're in your mid-30s.
I still think that she's just being a babysitter. And she said to the kids, who were frightened because of the boogeyman, nobody's going to get you tonight while I'm here. And she delivered. She does. She made good on her promise.
Just by the end of the film, she is as childlike as they are, you know, where she's sitting there whimpering, talking to Loomis about how...
It was the boogeyman, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the boogeyman. Or something.
Yeah.
With the professor said, who wrote that?
It's a combination between Carpenter and his then girlfriend, Deborah Hill.
Well, they need shot.
Apparently she wrote a lot of the dialogue for the girls.
Based on her own experiences of babysitting, apparently.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is obviously a problem where psychopathic killers frequently turn up and...
I did a lot of babysitting as a teenage girl myself, and it was never an issue for me.
What about the sex?
Oh, it was never an issue for me either.
Oh dear.
Uncomfortable.
I know, sometimes I'm never sure, do I take this conversation further? Or, you know, friend and professional boundaries. It's just
do you actually have that internal monologue? I've never noticed it before.
Can we talk about the cast?
Yes, let's talk about the cast. Let's talk about the casting of Jamie Lee Curtis in her first feature film role, and what a coup that was.
Who?
Laurie.
Right, okay.
Okay, so Jamie Lee Curtis, who... Well, you're already familiar with her family, whether you realise it or not, Ben, thanks to CinePunked.
Yes, we have watched her father in a dress.
Do you remember the film Some Like It Hot?
Two dudes in dresses. One of them marries a man in the end. Marilyn Monroe. Girls on a Train.
I didn't see it. That was the one I didn't watch.
Oh, was that the one you didn't watch? Oh, okay. You should really watch it.
So now he's got to fuck that whole bit out.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Have you seen Psycho? The original one, not the remake. Nobody should see that.
Psycho. American Psycho?
No, Psycho. Psycho.
in the shower
No.
scene.
Well, yeah,
I've seen the shower
I've
scene.
seen the shower scene.
That's
Obviously,
her mum.
here's Johnny.
No,
That guy?
that's The Shining.
That's
That's The Shining?
Yeah.
All right.
No, the one that
Cut
gets
bit
stabbed
out.
at the shower, that's
for the
Jamie Lee
marker,
No,
right.
we're going to keep that stuff in. Listeners, we have a lot of education.
Well,
to do
how
on
many
this show.
shower scenes are there in freaking horror movies?
Well, those are the two main ones, actually. Well, the shower, there's only one. It's Psycho, the scene that you've got in
what
The Shining.
one's Psycho?
That's
Is
the
that
door.
the one with the guy with the hockey mask?
No,
No,
that's Friday the 13th.
What the? Right.
Oh, dear.
See, I don't like this kind of movies.
No, well, I mean, Psycho is a classic kind of... It's a classic Hitchcock. We are going to come to Hitchcock at
Is that
some
the one
point.
with the leather?
No.
No.
Texas
No,
Chainsaw Massacre.
although, actually, it's the same story that inspired both Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know. I'm keeping a tab on it. So, yeah, the same storyline influenced Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Psycho. They are basically the same story,
Right.
but Psycho's better. But we'll come to that. We're
Does he dress up as anything? Does he dress in anything?
What, in Psycho?
Yeah.
I feel that we will come to Hitchcock at some point during this run, and we'll let you see it because I want to get your reactions just for the first time. It's more fun.
Okay.
I can't believe it's okay. So you haven't seen Tony Curtis, and you just about know who Janet Leigh is. Well, okay,
Janet Leigh's the one that gets stabbed in the shower.
Right.
in Psycho.
Right.
And that's Jamie Lee Curtis's mum.
Okay.
So whenever they were casting, they couldn't afford to put like an experienced,
Like a famous person.
a famous person in this role. They'd blown the budget on Donald Pleasance,
Who was cheap.
who was cheap as well. Yeah. So they were looking at all these different actresses, and along came Jamie Lee Curtis, who had a small role on television. I think she was a famous enough face from television at this point. But they realised they had Janet Leigh's mum. Janet Leigh, incredibly famous for dying in the opening act of Psycho, and that's the connection. And they were right. I mean, it's an actual it's beautiful casting, for that to be her debut film role as the daughter of probably the most famous slasher victim in film history at that point.
Okay.
I mean, she's fantastic. She's not a... Sometimes you sort of see the progeny of these great actors, and you
Yes.
go, I maybe wouldn't have cast them in anything ever. And this is the product of Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, and she is fabulous, and she still is great anytime you see her on screen.
Well, yeah, I thought her acting was a lot more genuine than boys, shit that all the other ones were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like straight out of drama school, kind
Yeah.
of.
Totally.
Haven't quite learned how to.
Every time I see that film
Even
I'm watching, totally, I'm actually rooting for you to die now.
Even the bit when she's like having a wee puff of the reef in the...
Did you feel that was an authentic puff of the reef?
Yeah. like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like, this is I imagine she probably did smoke. Right?
Everyone did.
It was
Right,
the
everyone
70s.
did back then.
Yeah.
So, but she comes across as genuinely somebody who is a complete novice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she is.
So yeah, her acting is good.
So there's that combination of sort of that brilliant acting, but also that coding. The fact that, as Rachel said, this is because of who her mother is, because of the importance of her mother within horror cinema, really. This is a great kind of casting coup to have achieved, and it is spectacular. I can't wait to see. At this point, I'm really looking forward to seeing the new film just to see how she has progressed.
Is it going to be the same woman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, she's back. And 40 years on, having watched her on other stuff, should be really good.
She's fabulous. She's just fabulous. She just seems like somebody you could sit and have a coffee and a chat with. Very intelligent.
So aside from her, there's also Donald Pleasance as the other character that you kind of have to talk about, really.
That's the doctor.
Yeah, Sam Loomis, who... Sam Loomis was the name of the boyfriend of Marion in Psycho, which is the character played by Janet Leigh, and that's why they used that name.
Oh, right. Okay.
So there's lots of little nods to other bits of classic cinema.
Nobody ever talks about the fact that the nurse in the car was Marion. But anyway.
Yeah. But Pleasance wasn't the first choice at all for this film.
Right.
So first choice was apparently Peter Cushing, which made this very nice nod to Hammer films. But Cushing's agent turned it down, allegedly because she didn't think it was getting enough money.
It wasn't very good money.
But
be fair.
Right. Since that did so well,
Yeah.
would they have got more money,
Depends.
or would they
Well,
have?
second choice after Peter Cushing was Christopher Lee, who also turned it down. And Christopher Lee later went on to say, "This was the biggest regret of my entire career."
Wow.
Because he would have made a packet.
Yeah.
I mean, Carpenter took a reduced fee, but he made sure he was in for, is it 10% of the profits?
Oh, he did well.
Didn't he? I mean, that's better than getting an actual fee for it, because that film made $70 million at the box office.
Yeah,
he got 10% of that.
his original fee was I think it was $10,000.
So he got $7 million.
So originally he was $10,000 to write, direct, and score the film. 10 grand. And if he's taking 10% of the box office,
$7 million.
yeah.
Wow.
Producers make a lot of money on these things if they do it well, or if you're on a percentage, which is very hard to get because most people are very aware. That might be a great thing. But if you're obviously working for a reduced fee and you got a name, you might take a percentage of the film in order so you got a vested interest in it. And it's a gamble. So obviously Sir Christopher Lee felt that it would have been worth his while, because Sam Loomis comes back many times until Donald Pleasance died, and then he couldn't.
I'm surprised Halloween didn't find a way to resurrect him in some way, but there we are by that point anyway.
But I mean, for me, he's just a little bit flat.
Yeah.
I just can't. I mean, I like Donald Pleasance, but in this one I just struggle a little bit with him. I did want to ask you about the score. As our resident musician,
Yes.
did you have any thoughts on the soundtrack to John Carpenter's Halloween? Boop, 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 boop,
Yes, I know how it goes. Like, it's okay. It does the job. It has that tension. I did like some of the sound effects that they used, but or sort of mood things. Especially that first scene, with the little boy looking at his sister and the boyfriend making out on
You like that?
the sofa, and then he moves around to the side of the house because he knocks something down, or I can't remember if that's what happened. But then there's like this note that plays, but like it's really bad, like electric keyboard sounds. You know,
It's 1978.
Yeah.
I mean, this is.
It was a great year. It was a fantastic year
Like,
in many ways.
it's like
some
the
good things happened in 1978.
the music is okay, but then again, it's a bit simple. It's a bit repetitive. It's a bit.
See, so this is what I love. I think what a lot of people love about Carpenter stuff is not only have you got this very barren kind of visual, and it's minimalist, so's the scores. A lot of the scores are like this. They are so restrained and held back, and it's about creating a little note of, or a little theme of discord. Rachel?
I don't ever have opinions on scores. I don't notice them. Honestly, this is why I find it really useful to get a musician's take on scores, because I genuinely don't notice them. After they're pointed out to me, I go, "Ooh, that was clever." But I really don't notice. I mean, I know the theme that everybody talks about, but I have no notion of how it's used cleverly to heighten tension all the way through.
Like, anytime he shows up, that's all you hear.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish they would hold it back because he's sort of lurking in the background. You're thinking, if I was in that, I just wouldn't have the score because it's so nice that he's just creeping around in the
You
background.
know what I would have, though? I would have, like, really eerie, high-pitched, kind of like a singular tone. Just ringing out, like...
Yeah, like a Rob Zombie kind of thing he made too. Or was it Marilyn Manson who used to stick chords like that?
Just to create tension.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think there was a lot of... an awful lot of tension, like, music-wise, in it. It was a bit... Oh, there's that motif again, you know? Like, it's not bad, it did the job, but I probably would have done it a little bit differently.
Well, then the other thing I want to touch on before we wrap, point of view, the perspective of the camera within this film.
Yes.
Which I think we mentioned earlier that opening shot is very much from a one-person perspective. We see...
Yeah, but it doesn't do that all the time.
No, but we do see a lot... We do a number of times see the world from Michael's perspective.
Well, it's a male gaze. I mean...
It very literally is.
It is a very literal male gaze. Yeah, I mean, that's part of... don't get me wrong, I love that opening sequence. I think it's fantastic. The first time I saw it, I didn't know the reveal was going to be this is a small boy, and it was genuinely disturbing to me to have that information withheld. Doesn't actually work when you go back and look at it. It's the angle's too high for it to be a small boy when you look at it with the knowledge that it's supposed to be a 6-year-old. But it does force the viewer into projecting themselves onto this male protagonist. And the gaze, and I know there's so many. Carol Clover's one that I can think of off the top of my head. So many different theorists point out that we are kind of put into the male perspective because that's how you withhold the information from the audience. That's while also giving the audience more information than the characters have. You put them in the perspective of the killer. You can't see the killer. You don't get the information you need in order to feel safe while you're watching the film. It heightens tension. It heightens discomfort because you know you're watching as a predator. And it also means that we have more information than the killer's victims, which we need to have in order to heighten the tension and to have that kind of cathartic release. But it very problematically forces the audience into an identification with a male gaze, a predominantly male gaze, and a male gaze that is intent on inflicting spectacularized violence on a female character.
Which is itself not new.
No, definitely not new. I mean, this is as old as Hollywood itself.
I mean, I think the most obvious... literal kind of example of this would be Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom is one of the most terrifying films, and I mean that genuinely. Even now, it's another one of those ones that has the power to really creep me out when I think about it. I remember watching that and the reveal of why he did the killing, and just being genuinely, and I mean the actor, I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, that's ridiculous, but it's genuinely unsettling, the delivery and the whole sort of idea behind it. But yeah,
I think Peeping Tom's one we're going to cover on the show as well at some point, because
hope so. I'd love to have the excuse to watch that again.
I may have to drag Ben round to the house to make him sit down and watch that one now.
Right, yeah.
It's another film that's remarkably lacking in gore. I mean, it had to be. Ruined the director's career. Completely ruined the director's career because it was considered so scandalous and so disturbing and horrifying. But it's completely lacking in gore.
Right.
Different era, though.
Sounds interesting.
It's fascinating in terms of what it does. Absolutely fascinating. Any closing thoughts on Halloween or the franchise? Ben, I'll give it to you first.
I don't know anything about the franchise. All I know is about this movie that I just watched. And it's not terrible.
Would you watch the new one? Based on this?
It depends.
That's a no.
No, it depends on what, like, if it's like that, like, gore-wise, yeah, I might watch it. Okay. I don't like gore. I don't like senseless gore just for the sake of the shock factor. I don't like that.
It won't be like that. The gore factor has upped as it's gone on. I'm afraid.
But stay away from the Rob Zombie version.
Oh, stay away from that by all.
It's excessive. And very, very violent and aggressive, and who
would have thought it from Rob Zombie?
But yeah, if you haven't watched that, I would definitely say go get yourself a copy and give it a watch. It's not bad.
That's fin praise from Ben. I'll take that. Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely watch the 40-year Halloween, particularly now that I know that it's written H2O out of the plot. That's a real win for me. I genuinely, I mean, I think it's a really interesting film. I think I can understand the appeal. I think it was very special, and I think it's a film that deserves its place in the cinematic canon.
I guess the last word is up to me. Oh, the joys of being the host. I think this is a great film. I still love what it's done with the genre. I love the influence that it's had, and I love its simplicity. It's very difficult sometimes to talk about a film that you actually do love, because it blinds us to some of its flaws and its faults. But I think that it was genre redefining. I think that it offers us a new perspective on sort of killers and slashers and threat, and it raises questions. I'm not completely convinced that it's as deeply misogynistic as some argue, but I do see that it is problematic, and I'll happily concede that point. And maybe we'll carry out a conversation about this online. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for listening. We've got a bunch of shows lined up the next few weeks, so if you have got your podcast subscriber, get it. If you don't already, subscribe to CinePunked. Check out our website, www.cinepunked.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We pop up around the country every now and then, live events as well, and see what we've got in store over the next few weeks. All that's left for me to do is to thank my colleagues once again. So, Ben.
Thank you for listening.
Dr. K.
Thank you and goodbye.
And for me, until the next time, thank you.
What's the Bogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.